Hello, I'm Llewellyn King, the host of White House Chronicle. Today we're in Malibu, California, where I've come to talk to a man who has some real answers to the immigration dilemma. We have people on the right who say there are no solutions short of deportation, and we have people on the left who say there are no solutions short of amnesty and citizenship. This gentleman has a different approach, a third way, something that might work, and I think you'll find his views interesting, if not compelling. My guest today is Mark Jason of the Immigrant Tax Inquiry Group here in Malibu, California. Welcome to the broadcast, Mark Jason.
Thank you, Llewellyn.
And what are the great issues facing the nation in immigration? You have studied this for nearly a decade. What have you learned that we don't usually understand about immigration?
What I've learned is that the government really is looking at the right place. They're looking for citizenship and they're looking for permits, but none of them really solve the great issues. The great issues are caused by the immigrants getting paid less money. They're getting a great benefit by being in this country illegally. The people that employ them are getting a great benefit because they pay approximately 25% less, but yet we have to pick up all the other costs. And we feel this in areas like health and education and practically every field.
Now, people tend to think that because they're working, albeit illegally, and they can get tax numbers, they can actually legally pay taxes while they are illegal, but they get the so-called ITIN,
individual tax identification number.
They can get that, and they rather like to get it.
Well, they
think it will help later with citizenship, but that's not your issue. Your issue.
That is one of the issues, Llewellyn. Right now, there's about 4 million immigrants on the ITIN system. And many of them are low-wage earners, and the system wasn't really designed for that because they can go into ITIN and they can place any income they want there. They don't have to say how much they're earning. They take advantage of that because there is a tax credit given for children. And what the biggest problem that the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration has been writing about is taking advantage of it and bilking American taxpayers by $5 billion every year by this gaming of the system.
Let us reduce this to specifics. I am a laborer. I have a job. I have an ITIN number, an ITIN number, which I have legally applied for, although I am illegal. I am paying some tax, whatever I say it is, into the system, but that entitles me to get a benefit for my children?
A tax credit.
A tax credit.
Tax credit. So you can theoretically, and this is what they do because we've looked at them, you can underreport your income, get your tax benefit, and make out like a champ. There's lots of people right now with Social Security numbers that are also filing ITIN reports now. And this is in New Mexico recently. They have a big problem. They're trying to catch it now. But there's lots of groups that are stopping them. In other words, trying to catch the fraudulent tax returns. But it's very, very difficult. It has to be done a different way.
Now, you can't legally anymore get a Social Security number if you are illegal, right?
Well, you can always apply for it.
Now, I had a cousin who was illegal, but her daughter was legal, living here in California. She applied and got a Social Security number, and in fact worked till she died very tragically very shortly afterwards. But she was technically illegal, although her children and grandchildren were in the States legally, one of those strange situations. But she was able to get all of the things that looked as though she was legal, except that she didn't have a passport and she couldn't come and go freely or easily. But most of these people are prisoners in the US, in a sense, of a prison they have entered voluntarily because they're illegal, but they can't go home. Many of them have no papers. Is that correct?
That's correct. Now, this is what I want to change. We're planning to
Go ahead.
We've designed it sounds like it's very simple, and it is simple. If If we get the immigrants to, the undocumented immigrants, to contribute a nickel for every dollar they earn, and get their employers to contribute the same, that's 10%. And if we do this through a special work permit, this is the crux of our program. If they each pay into this, the immigrant then gets a special work permit, which gives him practically all the benefits that a citizen has. We'll be able to pump $176 billion into the system over a 10-year period with just this minor contribution. And it's a way to correct the bad behavior of those filing the ITIN returns that we talked about earlier. No longer will they be able to file a return and get all this money back. All they have to do is, through their employer, is pay this tax, and they can do it now where they couldn't in 1886. They can do it now with a cell phone.
Let me go over the scheme because I think it's very important. Once you get an ITIN number, you can behave as a legal taxpayer with the benefits of a legal taxpayer while you're illegal, and you can cheat with impunity. Is that correct?
Unfortunately, that's the system that we currently have. And whether we have mass citizenship, as the Democrats want now, or work permits, that's still going to go on. So that's one thing we have to fix in the system.
Now, your proposal, which you spend a lot of your own resources in pushing, which is quite remarkable how dedicated you've been about this. We've been looking into it. Your own proposal, dear to your heart, not only is there this a nickel and a dollar on each side, but also that you would issue them, take away these ITIN numbers, issue them with a work permit.
A special work permit.
That would generate revenue, make them not legal, but enabled to come out of the shadows, to leave the country, to return, to go home if they want to, or to have whatever kind of life they want to, so long as they stay out of the prison system, etc.
Yeah, exactly. This, what I'm proposing is the financial lubricant to make it all happen. If you go to the website, we've allocated the money for a budget actually that takes care of many of the problems. And with $100 billion of the $176 billion, we can put $50 billion into education and have that for training veterans that have to compete against the immigrants.
Will this money go into the federal treasury? Will it go into local treasuries? We have, for example, here in Los Angeles, there's a huge immigrant community. It's probably the largest in the country. Houston, I think, is right behind it, or equal, or in the ballpark. Will the money go to Los Angeles to take care of the education, of the health care of those immigrants, or of the imprisonment should they commit crimes? Or will it go to the federal treasury where it'll go?
No. It goes to the state government. For instance, California will get $39 billion. What's surprising is that Georgia is I have friends from Georgia, and they have the 8th highest state as far as undocumented immigrants. Their share was $9 billion over a 10-year period.
What happens
to deal with the problems?
What happens? And we've got gridlock in Washington, and we have, as you've mentioned, you have Democrats and the basically Hispanic organizations, which tend to say citizenship or nothing, and you have people in the extreme side of the Republican Party, now dominant in that party, who say no deal, no amnesty, no work permits, deportation. What happens if these people just stay here? 11 million of them. Nobody thinks we have the resources or the hard-heartedness to deport 11 million people. No, never happened in history that many people have been expelled from a country, let alone this generous, kind one. What happens if they just stay here in the shadows as at present?
It'll go on like it is now. You'll have some of the immigrants with the Social Security numbers, and you never know who they are, and you'll have others without. And you'll have them, like you said earlier, just staying here in the country, starting second families, leaving their families back there in Mexico or Central America or wherever they're from, or Asia.
Or China, or let's be honest about it,
anywhere.
Or Britain, or Ireland. At one time there were a lot of Irish. There was a deal done with Tip O'Neill to do something about the illegal Irish immigrants, but there are illegal immigrants, I mentioned my cousin, from all over the world. So we better recognize they're not all walking from Mexico.
That's right, only 60% are from Mexico.
That's fallen off somewhat, hasn't it?
Lately it has.
So let's go over the points so we understand them very clearly. A work permit.
What I call a special work permit, it's unique.
Special work permit, unique work permit. Special tax on the employer who is already getting a low-cost worker, and on the worker who is here illegally. That money goes to the social services and costs created by the presence of illegals. And this is so simple, why don't we do it?
Yeah, I'll be going to Washington soon and speaking to both Democrats and Republicans. To the Democrats, they need to be convinced that mass citizenship is not a great idea. And let me tell you why. There's a segment of undocumented immigrants that work in the cash economy. Okay, in this beach community, there are dozens of immigrants, both legal and not legal, that work in this area, and I see them every day. Over the past few years, I've had a chance to interview them and discuss with them. And when I found out that the ones with Social Security numbers, the ones that received amnesty after 1986, invariably, they don't report their income. They report very little money. And I'll give you an example. In fact, it's on the webpage. If somebody wants to see the webpage and see the actual tax return, they can see it. It's a hard-working immigrant, and we sat down with her and put the numbers together, and they don't know how much they make, by the way. They might work for 8 or 15 homes in a year. We calculated that she made $25,000 over the year that we used in the report. And she wrote down, she declared, I think it was $6,000 or $7,000, okay, and didn't pay any taxes except the self-employment tax. And that was for Social Security and Medicare. And that was only $500 a year. So if you look at what she's going to be paying in over a 10 or 20 or 30 year period, it's a very little amount of money, but when they retire, they get, for every dollar they put in, they might get from anywhere from $8 to $17 in benefits back. And that's why it's not sustainable as a program. The way it's gamed, you know, and that's what I'm trying to cut out. Increasing the amount of undocumented immigrants that get Social Security numbers and game the American taxpayers.
But they're also gaming them if they only have the ITIN number and don't have a Social Security number. Is that correct?
They may have a Social Security and game it through ITIN or not.
What happens to people who are using somebody else's Social Security number or have made up one?
It's a big mess. It costs the IRS millions of dollars to try and sort through this. Their staff has been cut drastically. You know, it's an impossible task. There's another issue that was discussed recently about the commissioner for the IRS was very clear that he says that the ones that are working here illegally in companies and have withholdings, says he likes that because the immigrants really don't get any of the benefits, you know, from what they put in for taxes. And he said, why rock the boat? He said that system is working just fine, and it is, you know. And by the way, we don't want to change that in our program. We want to leave that alone and just have them pay an incremental amount of 5% more.
How do you mean? How does he mean it's working fine? They don't get any benefits for what they're paying. If they're paying into Social Security, what happens at retirement? What happens when they're old and infirm and they're still here?
Well, they're not supposed to be able to draw these benefits because they're not legal.
If people are old and infirm, they're going to go to the emergency room, they're going to sleep on the streets or in shelters or with families.
With family.
There is a cost. Life goes on, albeit in a very reduced and unenjoyable way.
There's so many needs, and they're so different from each other. A lot of them will continue to send money back home. A lot of them will go home when they want to retire.
We take a short break now for station identification, primarily for the benefit of our listeners on Sirius XM Radio. the POTUS channel 124, where this program can be heard 4 times every weekend. We also can be heard and seen around the world on the stations of Voice of America and on 200 American television stations. Mark, how has the public received your proposal, this idea of a third way in immigration?
Well, very well. We had a poll last year, and 70% of those that we asked support the third way as a solution. And over the last several years, we've had very good reception from the immigrants themselves. They just want to be part of the system, be a part of it. They want the dignity and respect, and this will give it to them.
So this could be very appealing for a politician.
It could be, it would be, yes.
And I like those 2 words, dignity and respect. Mark, you're an intriguing man. You've had an interesting life. Your family was in the movie business, which I suppose is why you're in Southern California in this beautiful weather. You have worked for government as an IRS inspector and for the state government in the university system, I understand, here in California. You're primarily an auditor, an accountant. You examine books, you look at numbers, you find...
Well, I was a special agent for the IRS, so we particularly went after tax fraud, tax evasion.
So you understand these issues?
Pretty well, yeah.
What led you to take such an interest in immigration and to commit so much of your own resources to it?
It started just out of curiosity about how cash economy immigrants here that are legal pay taxes. And that's what I mentioned when I found that tax fraud, and that it's common, it's not unusual. And I just started investigating more and more, and then I noticed the other issue about paying into Medicare and Social Security, and having that be a big repercussion when they retire of getting so much more money back. Then I began to study the other issues around it, and just couldn't stop. It was just interesting.
So in a way, you come at this differently than, say, myself. I'm interested in primarily from a humanitarian point of view. I think it would be a terrible thing to exist. And I've known stateless people. I had a friend who spent 7 years on the ships. He was from Europe till he finally managed to get to the United States and get citizenship, and I don't remember his story, it was a long time ago. But this business of being stateless is pretty terrible. You're exploited, you live in fear of the knock on the door. It's a pretty grim way to live, so I look at it more in a humanitarian way possibly than you do. But yours is a hard nuts and bolts, how much money it's costing us and how inefficient and how we have exposed ourselves to fraud. Would that be a fair analysis?
It's a good analysis, and I'll tell you what upsets me is when I hear government folks saying like, well, let's just make them line up and pay taxes as that's the solution. That's the biggest myth I've ever heard, line up and pay taxes. Well, you have 6.5 million already doing that illegally, but they have someone else's number. And like I mentioned earlier, the other ones can't do that. So you're really not talking about a fair system where people can all line up and pay tax and have it really mean something. You know, and I'm not talking about sales tax, you know, we know about that. I'm not talking about property tax, but income taxes.
Do you have a lot of, you've talked about interviewing some of these people. Do you maintain some sort of intelligence in the illegal community or the undocumented community?
In my research, I've just talked to a half dozen of them. And
well, you yourself speak Spanish?
Oh, yeah, I speak Spanish.
And have some relationship. Went to school for a while in Mexico, so you're having some of an organic understanding of the
I do, and I have
Mexican part.
And I do, and I have compassion for the Latin immigrants, for the ones that come here from Asia, from all of them. It's just tough. They're leaving situations where I've seen where they live in Mexico, you know, especially Mexico. And some have trouble getting fresh water, you know, live in these dirt huts, you know, and they don't have it, and they get them here. And we have lights, and it's safe living here, and pavement, and it's a big improvement in their life. So they should be willing to pay. And then that's why it only had to be 5%. Some people say, well, that's really not enough. But it's an amount that if they both pay that, a symbiotic relationship develops, where they're both contributing to this immigrant's benefit. This immigrant now has a special work permit. He'll have that with him, and it relieves their families of the same issue. Their families can now have the flexibility to travel back home, and I think that the Americans won't be so upset with them right now because they'll see the money flowing into ERs, which we really need. California right now has a Medi-Cal program for undocumented immigrants.
ERs, emergency rooms.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about this Medi-Cal now from the California state. This money, this billions of dollars, will go into California. Some of it will go into California and help with that program and help the governor who's trying to make sure that the immigrants are taken care of.
Have you had any luck talking to governors? They may be more amenable to pushing this proposal because they're the ones who hurt when they got to find the money to take care of the destitute people.
There is some interest from them, and I'm not planning on meeting with any of the governors in D.C., just some senators and congressmen. And I'll get to, I've sent them letters on this, by the way. I've sent them notes the year before last, and I plan to send just a new package. We have a new design. We actually redid things completely after our first trip to D.C. and came up with more money. But it kind of sounds funny, but we were going to charge the employers 10%. The homeowners 10%, and when I went to D.C., they really didn't like that, so I made it only 5%. And the immigrant now kicks in, and we picked up some more money that way. So only 5%.
And this would produce $176 billion.
Yeah, $176 billion because it's amazing.
You have a chart. You have a chart, a pie chart, which we'll put up on the screen. It shows the disposition of this money.
What I came up with is, under education, we can take $40 billion and we can have after-school programs, trade schools, veteran retraining, preschool activities, dropout prevention. That's so important. We have a 25% high school dropout rate now. That's not sustainable. And various scholarships. The issue where people mostly notice them is in the ER room. And we have $30 billion to have medical clinics, urgent care to support family planning.
It's at magenta, the reddish part of the pie there. It's healthcare, and then you've got community centers.
Well, let me finish up with medical,
absolutely.
Because this budget has evolved. Patrick Kennedy wrote a book, and it was very interesting. And I put mental health money for mental health in this budget also. There's billions of dollars, vaccines and wellness training. For community centers, this is primarily for young people and immigrants to learn. It gives them a place where they can learn English as a second language, nutritional guidance, and that's important because we have a lot of people, women from South America and Central America, Hispanic women, have a problem with obesity, and that's gallstones and
diabetes.
Diabetes is a severe problem.
Yeah.
So this is an area where they can get some training and counseling on how to deal with those problems. Homeland Security and border security is $10 billion. Especially conservatives kind of focus on that point. They want to stop the immigrants from coming in. Well, in this budget, there's $10 billion to do that. And there's also money for prisons, and because unfortunately we have a large population of them in jail, and that helps there. We have $76 billion in the program for infrastructure. And I especially noticed this on my last trip when I went to D.C. I've never seen bridges under bridges to catch stuff. We don't have that problem here. We have infrastructure problems in California. We have water pipes that are breaking that are over 100 years old. But we don't have like the bridge problems they have back east.
We have a national infrastructure crisis where we are not replacing, but the poster child for infrastructure not working is the subway system in Washington, D.C., which was considered the best in the world, both architecturally and operationally, and now it's a basket case because there was not enough money for maintenance and probably not enough talent. And it's across the country. So anything that goes to infrastructure will help to keep this country competitive. It goes beyond.
We have to have commerce, otherwise the immigrants won't survive either. And within the budget can generate enough revenue for over 1 million jobs, American jobs, 1.4 million American jobs in this program. And that's through all the states.
Which is a substantial employment boost.
It is.
How do you see these jobs being created? Are these for example, out of infrastructure?
These are construction jobs, these are schools, medical, scholarships, all training, whatever it involves in all these subjects, areas that I had mentioned to you.
And what do you need to get this program, first on the national agenda, secondly through Congress and implemented?
When I go, I'm going to be going back to DC soon, and I hope to get find some senators there, congressmen willing to write a bill, people that really care about immigration reform. A lot of people talk about it, but they don't want to take any action. They just want to say their citizenship or nothing, or work permits and nothing. But I want them to develop this system for the country, and I think that's basically what they need. And I can't imagine another system doing this. You have to get funds to take care of all these problems that are going on right now. And neither citizenship nor just work permits will take care of that issue. And we have to stop the fraud. And this program will do that too.
I take it you're also in favor of stopping the flow of illegals or undocumented, if that's the...
Well, yeah, willing to do that. I don't think it's not going to be that easy. You know, if you have 40-foot bridge, they tunnel underneath it. So we've been finding that in California. We just found one yesterday. It was like a half mile long, and we got 7,000 tons of cocaine, and it still goes on. You just have to get more serious about it.
Well, also with the size of our coastline and the tourism that we want and need, and people overstay there. And the whole world has this problem, where you have prosperity, Western Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, of course. Where you have prosperity, you have desperate people wanting to share in that prosperity and trying to get in. It's probably worse now than it's ever been because there's so much transportation. And once immigrants get in illegally, there are enough of their own people already there to form cells for them to survive. You know, if you arrive here from Bangladesh, there are Bangladeshis to take care of you. If you arrive from Ireland, there are Irish pubs where you can meet other Irish people. There's a way. There are underground railways, if you will, for immigrants, which because there are so many immigrants here already, and that makes it more difficult. But I think one should bear in mind that the problems in Europe are worse by quite a few orders of magnitude.
We're fortunate here that we don't have to deal with that problem.
But here in the U.S. there are solutions, and maybe yours is a simple solution to a complex problem if people would just focus on it.
Well, thank you, Llewellyn.
Seems to be the case.
I hope so.
Well, I wish you the very best of luck.
Thank you, Llewellyn.
We will talk on this issue again in the future, I hope.
Thank you.
That's our show for today, which came to you from Malibu, California, where the Immigrant Tax Inquiry Group is based. We'll see you next week, I hope. Cheers.